Wait for it. Wait for it. Not yet. Not yet. And there it is. What's up, Earthrockers? It's your boy Shovatar, back again to talk about Dawn of Sorrow some more. I have a lot more Dawn of Sorrow footage than just the main run-through, because Dawn of Sorrow, like Aria of Sorrow, like Harmony of Dissonance, like Symphony of the Night, has an alternate game mode, where you play as a different character besides the main character. As in Aria of Sorrow, this alternate character is Julius Belmont. Chronologically the latest Belmont in the series, I believe. These alternate modes, just to explain like what these alternate modes usually are in these Metroid-style Castlevania games, typically the alternate modes play more like classic Castlevania games, where they don't have any RPG elements, they don't have any inventory or extra systems. It's just like you're a dude, and you play through the game with some sub-weapons, and that's just like how it goes. That's what it's like in Aria of... Well, actually I should amend that. They do typically have slight RPG elements, where like you might get more health from energy tanks, or you might get, you know, buffs from killing bosses, like permanent power increases from killing bosses in Max. The only alternate mode with absolutely no power increases of any kind was Maxime mode in Harmony of Dissonance. The way that Julius mode worked in Aria of Sorrow was that Julius had a base stats, and then every time you killed the boss, he would get buffed. Like you'd permanently do more damage after that. And I think that, by contrast, Julius mode in Dawn of Sorrow has, as you may be able to see in the top right corner of the screen, a leveling system where you level up, you gain experience when you kill things, and you level up like Soma does. And I believe that this change was made in order to discourage you from just doing what I did when I played Julius mode, which is just rushing all the bosses and getting as fast as you can. I think they wanted to, even in the alternate modes, incentivize combat to a certain degree, so that way, if you were fighting things, you didn't feel like you were wasting your time. Which, I don't think I would have had a problem either. I don't have a problem with it the way that it is now. I don't think I would have had a problem with it if it worked the way the Julius mode worked, because I am basically going to play this like just, I'm going to go to the bosses. Not going to take too many detours. Not going to take any detours, basically. So if you were hoping that, if you watched like the main game footage and were hoping that you'd be able to see more of the castle in the Julius mode footage, that's not going to happen, unfortunately. But what is going to happen is I am going to have a lot more fun reliving this footage here than I did reliving the Dawn of Sorrow footage. I mentioned that Julius mode removes, alternate modes in general remove RPG elements, and nowhere is that more welcome than in Dawn of Sorrow. One of the things that I praised, well, the things that I praised about Dawn of Sorrow were the visuals, the music, the movement, and the combat. And Julius mode retains all of that while eliminating the horrible, obnoxious, boring, tedious, monotonous, repetitive, unforgivable, inexplicable, execrable RPG systems that were added in Dawn of Sorrow. You don't have to farm for anything. You don't have to draw any fucking pictures on the touchscreen with the stylus. I mean, not that I was doing that in my main footage anyway, but basically, Julius mode in Dawn of Sorrow gets rid of everything about the main game of Dawn of Sorrow that sucked, and keeps everything about Dawn of Sorrow that was good. So it's kind of like, I basically think of this as like, this is the real version of the game. Like, the thing that you do when you play as Soma and you, like, farm for weapons for 5 hours, and then you actually play the game for, like, 3 hours, that's not the real game. That's just like a thing you have to do in order to unlock the real game, which is Julius mode. And as a classic Castlevania game, it's really fun. It reminds me of, it's kind of like Rondo, but harder. That attack from the giant, I hate this boss. I don't know if I talked much about this boss in my previous videos, but like that boss is like so fucking obnoxious. I don't like bosses that I mean, so the reason I got hit there is because I kept jumping and whipping at him and whipping him, and you have to jump if you want to hit him with the whip. I guess I could have just sat on the ground and thrown axes at him if I wanted to, which brings me actually to something else I want to talk about as it relates to Julius mode, which is that Julius mode is not just Julius mode. Julius mode in Dawn of Sorrow is like Dracula's Curse in that it introduces multiple playable characters. You can play as Julius or Yoko or Alucard. And like Dracula's Curse, you can swap between them. I'm not going to get Yoko in this footage because the whole conceit of this run is that I'm going to play through as much of the game as I can with just Julius. And the reason I say as much of the game as I can is because Alucard is required to get to certain areas of the game because he has a bat form that Julius doesn't have. But except for the moments when I absolutely have to swap to Alucard to get to somewhere, I'm going to be playing the rest of the whole game as Julius. And I'm going to have separate runs for each of the three characters. I'm going to have one where I just do just Julius, one where I do just Yoko, one where I do just Alucard. And the reason I bring this up now is on the subject of Julius's sub-weapons, and in a larger sense, the subject of the combat in Julius mode. In Dracula's Curse, there was just like a different philosophy with how the three different characters were designed. Where I think what I said in my Dracula's Curse videos was that in Dracula's Curse there's 4 playable characters. There's Trevor, and then you can pick between either Sypha or Grant or Alucard. And the way that Sypha, Grant, and Alucard were designed was sort of on this spectrum of what they helped you with. Where Sypha was really good in combat. Sypha in Dracula's Curse had really powerful magic spells that could solve a lot of problems that Trevor really couldn't as it relates to combat. Grant had some combat capabilities, severely nerfed combat capabilities in the US version. It's kind of hard to talk about JP Grant and US Grant as the same character because they are pretty different, but generally speaking, Grant had like this mix of like combat usefulness and then utility in the form of added movement, like Grant could jump higher and climb on walls. And then at the farthest end of the spectrum you had Alucard, who was terrible in combat, but had very good utility. He could turn into a bat and fly around to completely avoid certain segments of the game, and to just move around and interact with the world in ways that Trevor or even Grant could not. So it's like you have Sypha to help with combat, you have Grant as kind of like a jack of all trades, and then you have Alucard to help you with utility. That's not how the characters are arrayed or designed in Dawn of Sorrow. In Dawn of Sorrow, because the emphasis on the game is put so much more on combat, like there's not... When I talk about utility as it relates to Dracula's Curse, I mean movement, but I also mean like utilization of certain sub-weapons. Like this is kind of gonna get pretty deep, but Alucard in Dracula's Curse could use like a stopwatch sub-weapon. Trevor could too, but the stopwatch was like the only sub-weapon that Alucard could use in Dracula's Curse, so he ended up being there for like stopwatch usages and turning into a bat to avoid things. That's not really how that's just not how Dawn of Sorrow is designed. Like in Dracula's Curse, all you want to do is get to the end of the level, so avoiding enemies is, like with Alucard, is more feasible, and it's also more incentivized because of how difficult the combat is and how punishing it is. But to get back to my point, because Dawn of Sorrow is not designed like that, because Dawn of Sorrow is designed to you basically just kill every enemy you see, it wouldn't make sense for them to design the characters in the same way. it wouldn't make sense for them to make Julius good at combat and then Alucard good at like random shit, because you don't have to do random shit in Dawn of Sorrow. All you have to do in Dawn of Sorrow really is just run around killing things. You don't have to worry about, you know, navigating environments and like how you're going to do that. So as a result, all three of the characters are competent at combat. I don't know if I necessarily would say. I guess I would say Julius is probably the best at regular combat in Julius mode. And the reason why I say that, the thing is, it goes back to the whole subject that kicked off my whole little tangent here, which is his sub-weapons. Julius has access to 4 sub-weapons. Cross, Axe, Holy Water, and then Grand Cross. And that, combined with the fact that he has a long-range whip, means that he has this vast default range of influence. Like it's very hard. Julius is never going to encounter a situation that he can't deal with. Yoko and Alucard both kind of have limitations where they have shorter range default weapons. They have, yeah, there's Alucard. Oh my god, it's Symphony of the Night. Symphony of the Night is here. They have shorter range default weapons, but then they have some powerful spells to make up for it. With Alucard, it's more like... Alucard in this mode kind of plays like Symphony of the Night Alucard does, but I don't think I'm going to talk too much about that, because I think I might actually have enough brain material to do a whole commentary about the Alucard run. We'll see. With Yoko, and then with Yoko, you kind of have to decide, am I going to solve this problem with my sub-weapons or with my like default attack? It's hard for Yoko to... Yoko just has to commit more to doing a lot of damage. Whereas with Julius can maintain a safe distance and do a ton of damage because he has the whip and because of the whip and because of the sub-weapons. So, in general combat, I would say Julius is the best character, which is how it should be. So that's like the baseline design of Julius mode and the conceit of it. And as you might have noticed, I bet that's getting picked up. Sorry, it's fucking... What the fuck even is that, dude? Sorry, it's gotten really hot out here. It's gotten really hot here, at least recently, so I have to, like, leave the window open. And a consequence of that is that the street sound coming in is going to be worse, unfortunately. It's either close the window and sweat through my clothes, or, like... or move my whole setup somewhere else, which I don't really want to do. And you know what? And it's like it's better now than it would be if I waited until later today. Because people go fucking insane at night. People are like screaming and driving their cars super loud. At least during the afternoon, it's somewhat civilized. What was I talking about? Julius mode. Yeah. So another important conceit of Julius mode is the fact that it's not just an alternate game mode. It's also like an alternate story ending. As you may have noticed with that conversation between Julius and Alucard, if you watch my main Dawn of Sorrow video, there's 3 endings, and in one of the 3 endings, Soma becomes the Lord of Darkness. He picks up Dracula's mantle as an evil guy. Same thing happens in an alternate ending of Aria of Sorrow. And Julius mode is sort of exploring, well, what if that happened? What would happen if that happened? Because think about the alternate modes in these Castlevania games normally don't concern themselves with thinking of it as a complete narrative concept. It's more just like a thing you do for fun. But here they turned it into basically an extension of one of the alternate endings of the main game, which is really interesting, because it raises a question that I hadn't really considered before with Aria of Sorrow's alternate endings, which is, what if, like, which ending is better? Oh, actually I should stop for a second to talk about this boss fight, because this boss is pretty tough. The thing about this boss that's tricky to deal with on Julius is not really the dolls, because you can just throw the axe to shred them pretty much, as long as he doesn't summon them over and over again, which he sometimes does. The problem is killing the mannequins that he summons fast enough so that they don't go into the Iron Maidens. And I have a theory about this, which is that I'm fairly sure that the health, like, destroying the mannequins isn't based off of health. It feels like it's based off of how many times you hit them. Because, like, I'll whip them 3 times and they die, but then sometimes I'll whip them, like, twice, but do, like, a double hit, where basically if you swing Julius's whip and then keep the button held down, holding down the whip button on Julius makes the whip flail, but if you swing and then keep the button held down, it'll, like, hit the enemy and then start, like, flailing, but it'll still be inside the enemy, so it'll do, like, damage and then do a little bit of extra damage, and that's what I was doing back there. That was like the 26, then 5, instead of just the 26 on the mannequins. And for some reason, if I did 2 double hits, they would just die. But if I did, like, 3 normal hits, they would... I don't know. I feel like I've hit them 3 normal times, and they've died, and they, like... Maybe it's just the way the numbers work out. Anyway... yeah, that boss is pretty easy on Julius. As long as he doesn't summon so many dolls that you run out of MP to use the axe, you should be fine. I should also mention this is out of sequence with how the main game goes, because normally it goes like chapel, like entrance, then lab, then chapel, then guest house, then back to the condemned tower. That's how I do it in the main game, but because you get to the condemned tower from the chapel, it made more sense to just go from the lab to the guest house, clear out the chapel, then go right to the condemned tower and the clock tower. And it doesn't really matter. Like, Julius mode has leveling mechanics, but it's either I fight, like, if I go to the chapel first, then it only means I'm gonna be like 2 levels, maybe like 2 levels higher. Oh, this is funny. I wanted to redo this, because I like, so many times when I did this, I'd keep getting hit by that barrel, and it was like no matter how many times I got to this part of the game, and like I reminded myself that he was gonna throw a barrel at me, for some reason I could just never fucking hit it. But there I did. Yeah, I'm gonna mostly use this opportunity, this like footage commentary opportunity, to talk about the boss fights, because the boss fights are... This is another thing that reminds me of Rondo. The boss fights are really the centerpiece of Dawn of Sorrow. And that's especially the case on Julius mode. Because it's also... Because the fact that Julius has so many different options means that it's... Well, I guess this is also true for Soma. I was going to say it's a test. It's like testing your decision-making, not just your instincts. Ah, look at this. Or listen to this. It's actually insane how much better this is than the Soma mode music. Because when you play the game as Soma, it doesn't play this music in the chapel. Another reason, yeah, I want to talk about the boss fights, because I have some Julius boss rush footage that I'm probably going to upload after this, and I want to kind of use this as an opportunity to also talk about the boss rush while I'm talking about the larger game in general, because my experience with the boss rush was very harrowing, because I decided to no-damage it the way that I no-damage the Aria of Sorrow boss rush, but the Aria of Sorrow boss rush and the Dawn of Sorrow boss rush are 2 very different beasts, and it was a more intense experience than I was expecting. But the Puppet Master is not a problem. The Puppet Master is actually... I tabulated all my boss rush attempts. Like, how many times I failed to each boss. When I upload the boss rush footage, you'll see it in the description, and I actually, in all my attempts, which was over 100, I never lost to the Puppet Master. It's kind of insane. But in the boss rush, you have more MP, so you can just spam axes no matter how many of the dolls he summons. Playing as Julius is fun, but I do think Julius's model is a little bit... I don't know, he looks a little stocky. He's very bulky around the midsection, and his run animation's a little silly. He also doesn't have his phase through things ability that he had in Aria of Sorrow. What's cool about the Dimitri fight is that he doesn't just mimic soul attacks, he'll mimic sub-weapons too. And the axe is the best sub-weapon to bait him into using, because if you position yourself correctly, you can, like, it's just easy to get into a rhythm of avoiding the axes he throws and then just getting back in a range to whip him. It's harder to do that if you hit him with any of the other ones, because the cross, if he's throwing a cross, like, you can't whip him while he's doing that. If he's throwing the Holy Water is probably the worst, because not only will he hit you at whip range, but he also leaves behind a fire patch, which means you can't go back in there again. Damn. Fucking hell. Yeah, killing Dimitri in the boss rush is pretty cool, because sometimes, when you do hit the final, like, the killing blow, he gets knocked up in the air, and you can do this thing where, like, you knock him in the air once, and then if you're gonna kill him on the next swing and you hit him, you can, like, knock him in the air again. So it's like you're like fighting game comboing him. I don't remember if that actually happens in the boss rush footage or not, but I'm guessing it doesn't, because that's how these things usually go. This boss is very frustrating because of that attack right there. It's another thing where the game is, like, baiting you into making a bad decision, because you typically have to jump to hit that guy. But I basically think of, but if he winds up the diagonal feather attack while you're in midair, like while you're jumping and hitting him, you don't have time to get out of the way of it. So if you're trying not to get hit, then the smartest move is just to not jump, but you have to jump to hit him. So that's something that the Dawn of Sorrow bosses do a lot, where they're like, either you keep damaging it, which is risky, or you sit with your thumb up your ass, which is safer. And I don't really appreciate having to make that kind of decision. I would appreciate it more if there was just a way to do damage from a safe distance. Not always an option, of course, but I'm just talking about my ideal boss fights. Yeah, well, this is one of the few places where you have to turn into Alucard. The Malphus boss, the Blackwing boss, is not in the boss rush for some reason. I don't know. I actually don't know why it isn't. Dimitri is, but Malphus isn't. I don't know why. Oh, that's the Julius dance. His run animation's a little goofy, so if you just, like, strafe back and forth, he, like, does a little dance. I think I did that because I was trying to bait the bone serpent, the hunchback on the bone serpent down there. One of the fucking hardest enemies to hit in the whole series, in my opinion. Dimitri is actually pretty frustrating to fight in the boss rush, because this is another thing the Dawn of Sorrow bosses do a lot. They're very random. Where Dimitri, like, sometimes if you close distance with Dimitri, he'll jump back. But then sometimes he will just sit there and then pull a knife on you and, like, shank you. And I don't really know what makes him do which of the two things. So you can get into this rhythm with Dimitri where you're used to hitting him a certain number of times and then chasing him, but then, like, it's like you're hitting him and you're expecting him to jump back, and then he doesn't do it for some fucking reason. Then he just knifes you, and then you've taken damage and you have to restart. That happened to me several times during my boss rush attempts on multiple characters, but including on Julius. This is what I mean when I talk about how Julius has so many different tools. Like, the axe is perfect for dealing with the halberd dudes. Fucking Christ. Another thing that... You know, I figured out the Hunchbacks in Dracula's Curse pretty well, and the Hunchbacks in Castlevania 1 pretty well, because... Oh, great. Why do people do this shit, man? I figured out the Hunchbacks in Castlevania 1 and Castlevania 3 because they're consistent. But the Hunchbacks in Symphony of the Night and Dawn of Sorrow kind of seem to just kind of do whatever they want. Which, if you have sharp eyes, if you're familiar with Symphony of the Night, you may have noticed that some sprites have been reused from Symphony of the Night, besides just obviously Alucard's sprite. The Hunchbacks are from Symphony of the Night. There's a couple more that you're going to see later on from Symphony of the Night. And that's what I mean when I say that this game looks great. This game looks... It's like the best looking game since Rondo and since Symphony of the Night. I may have already said that. So now we're coming up on a new boss, Gurgoth. Gurgoth is... When I played Dawn of Sorrow as Soma, Gurgoth was the first big hurdle that I had to... The first, like, boss that just hard-walled me. Where it was like, I could not beat this boss. After extensive time spent in the boss rush, I have now more or less learned Gurgoth. That was the thing that fucked me up when I first learned the boss, was the jump forward thing. And because you're kind of... You're incentivized to stay away from him, to gain distance on him for most of the fight, but then you can't stay too far away from him because you have to be ready to slide under him when he does the jump. And that was the thing that I had a hard time with, was transitioning between maintaining distance and then closing the distance. With Julius, it's way easier to just... maintaining distance is never a problem. Maintaining damage while you have distance is never a problem with Julius. So I would say fighting this dude is easier on Julius than it is on certainly any of the other Julius mode characters, because you don't have to do any like weird. You can just always hit. You can just like hit it. It's easier to hit him safely. Yeah, the cross fucking shreds him. And yeah, this is really important too. The fact that when you crouch, if you're like crouched up against the wall, sometimes your whip can go so far that it can hit his foot when nothing else could. But really, the only thing the thing that really determines your success or failure on the Gurgoth fight is just like, can you react to the jump in time? And that gas cloud attack, it actually is possible for him to do that if he gets right up in your face. So like when you're up against the wall and then he does that shit, you can actually take unavoidable damage. But usually the AI chooses not to do that. So that's like, it's possible for him to just damage you and there's nothing you can do about it, but it almost never happens. No damage Gurgoth. Good job, me. This is the thing about the whip, the Belmont whip, that always makes it good, is the way that it lets you control spacing. If I really wanted to... Actually, I think I'm gonna have to anyway. Oh no, okay, never mind. Yeah, if I really wanted to, I could have swapped to the Alucard and just like super jumped or bat form flew up through the middle of the tower, but this is like my weird commitment to the concept of I only wanted to swap off of Julius when I absolutely had to. The title says Julius only, which is a lie, but I wanted it to be the smallest lie, as small a lie as I could make it be. That doesn't work. As minor of a lie as possible. I think that's the best way that I can put it. Oh, the werewolves from fucking Symphony of the Night, of course. Well, technically the werewolves from Rondo, but whatever. I think it's nice. I think it's nice to have that connective tissue. I said before that Aria, like, I would have been fine if the series like the series storyline ended with Symphony of the Night, and then everything else was like some kind of weird alternate dimension or timeline or something. But playing through Aria and Dawn of Sorrow, I don't really have a problem with the events of Aria and Dawn of Sorrow like being integrated into the larger timeline, because the only thing I really have a problem with is just the notion of the 1999 Dracula War. And this is something that I've already talked about, so if you've watched my other videos, I'll try to keep this brief. But basically, my position is that I think that the ending of Symphony of the Night is a very definitive end for Dracula's character, and I'm resistant to the notion of anything involving him coming after that, because Symphony of the Night takes place in like 1797, and I sort of tend to think of that as that's like when Dracula died. But Aria of Sorrow established that he came back in 1999 and then died then, events which are never depicted in any game. The reason that I'm okay with it is because Dracula doesn't literally ever come back in Aria or Dawn of Sorrow. I mean, it's like he kind of does, but he does, but he doesn't, is the best way that I can put it. I think the reason that I'm okay with it is because it's like the Dark Lord's, it's like Dracula's powers manifesting in a different literal human being. Because the end of Symphony of the Night, Dracula basically realizes that he's made a terrible mistake. And it wouldn't make sense for him to go back to being evil after that point. At that point, he should just be consigned to the abyss, in my opinion. 0 times did I ever clear that without taking damage. Same there. So I should just talk a little bit about the clock tower level. Spikes are the biggest hazard here. You just have to, like, I pretty much always take that 146 damage you just saw me take. There's nothing I don't feel like there's anything I can really do about it. Why was I talking about 1999? Something about the storyline, I guess? Yeah, something about the storyline of Aria of Sorrow. Aria of Sorrow and Dawn of Sorrow. Which brings me back to the narrative thrust of Julius mode. Which is that I kind of feel like... the ending where Soma becomes the Dark Lord just kind of makes more sense. Because... that's like the whole crux of his character, is that he's got evil powers inside of him, and all that's going to happen is he's going to spend the rest of his life, like, people are just going to try to exploit the evil powers, or he's going to have to, like, fight against it, so it somehow seems, poetic, I guess, for him to ultimately fail in that. I mean, it's a sadder ending, but it's not called Dawn of Happiness, okay? Okay, this boss is really, really interesting. So Zephyr, when I was doing no damage boss rush attempts, Zephyr was actually the boss that I lost to the second most amount of times, and the trick with Zephyr is you just have to respect him, like, so much. Because like, this is the one fight where you really can't... you're not really, like, ever safe controlling the distance with the whip. Because Zephyr can move so fast and just give you so little time to react that you can't ever feel like you're 100% safe just trying to use the whip. And what I'm demonstrating here is actually not, I think, a good strategy. What I do in my boss rush is I'm basically never really fighting him. I'm never really hitting him with the whip. I'm only ever hitting him with the holy water. As you can see there, if you hit him with the very end of the whip, then you kind of have time to backdash and then react to him. But generally speaking, I would not do this. Yeah, Zephyr was a pain in the ass to actually fight in the boss rush, but I think that the actual like motions of fighting him are really, really interesting and elegant, I think. It's just this constant... It actually kind of reminds me of the Julius fight in Aria of Sorrow, ironically enough, where it's like you're trying to constantly keep distance and control the fight against this thing that's really fast and can hit you from really far away. Which is kind of what it's like when you fight Julius in Aria of Sorrow. So it's like constantly engaging, it's constantly keeping you doing something. Yeah, then I think I ultimately do prefer this ending to the main, to like the whatever the fuck the canon ending is, just because it's like, let's just end this whole Soma cruise thing, because where could it possibly go? Like, Dawn of Sorrow is basically exactly the same game as Aria of Sorrow, narrative wise. I mean, I don't know if it necessarily provides any closure, because if the powers of Dracula could manifest in Soma after Dracula died, then could they just go to someone else after Soma dies? I don't know, I think I just like it better, narratively. It's a fascinating little puzzle, the whole Aria of Sorrow, Dawn of Sorrow thing, and in terms of, like, a puzzle in terms of, like, story design and, like, narrative decisions. And it all stems from basically the same problem, which is their attempts to create a Castlevania game without Dracula. Which is something that like I alluded to briefly, I'm generally in favor of, because I do think that Symphony of the Night should be the last time we see Dracula in the canon timeline, but now you're kind of left without the centerpiece of Castlevania. Holy water, yes, okay. This is what's so, like... I think this is what's so fun to me about the Julius mode in this game and in Aria of Sorrow, is the fact that, you know, Soma has souls, right? Soma can get so many different abilities from so many different sources that do so many different things that it's kind of like... Jesus, this guy's fucking me up so bad. I'm getting outplayed to hell and back by this troll, whatever the hell it's called. Soma has so many different tools available to him that it's hard to keep track of them, and it's hard to, like, figure out what they all do. Which is why I basically use, like, a handful of them throughout the entire run for both Aria and Dawn of Sorrow, because I just don't, like... I don't know and I don't care. Whereas with the Julius mode, like, I know what the holy water does and what the axe does and what the cross does. So I already have in my brain the instincts for what tool to use in what situations. Like there was a dude back there at the start of the zone. There was a zombie pirate underneath me, like down a slope, and I knew that I had the tool to... Oh, this is actually... Okay, so the reason I'm pausing here is because, like I've mentioned before, it's gotten warm here recently, and people are going, like, insane. People are out super late, and they're being really loud, and I paused here because I heard people outside who were literally screaming. And I don't mean like screaming like with joy, because I know what that sounds like. I mean, I heard people screaming like someone was getting murdered. Like I thought someone had gotten stabbed, or there was some kind of like car accident or something. It was like full on like traumatic like screaming. But then when I got up to, so I got up and looked out the window because I'm like, what the hell's happening? And then it's just like a pack of Zoomers. It's just a pack of 7 Zoomers out there who were just screaming for no fucking reason. I don't even like raising my voice. I don't understand who these people are who just shriek like they're getting killed for fun. So that's my old man complaints about noisy kids outside. That's what that pause was. This is my least favorite part of the whole game. I already kind of talked about this in my main game commentary, but water levels just suck. That's no exception in Dawn of Sorrow. It's no exception with Julius. I guess having a long-range whip mitigates it somewhat, because it means you don't have to worry as much about closing distance or about moving fast. I have never ever gotten past that part without falling into that little spike urchin thing, and I have no idea how you would do that. Not only is this zone annoying because you can't like move properly in water, but most of the enemies here are not that fun to fight. I guess this part's okay. Fighting the big Alrayun or whatever it's called. This is alright. And what's interesting here is that like because Dawn of Sorrow is like harder than Symphony of the Night. When I played Symphony of the Night, it took me so fucking long to figure out how those things worked because I didn't have to. With Dawn of Sorrow, it's easy for things to be more like things are more dangerous in Dawn of Sorrow. Dawn of Sorrow is not like a super hard game, but it's definitely more dangerous than Symphony of the Night is. So when you're put in a situation like that where you're actually in danger of dying, you're forced to learn enemy behaviors. And that is, if I had to give one complaint about Symphony of the Night, that would be it, is that not every game has to be as hard as like fucking Bloodlines or like Dracula's Curse, but the fact that Symphony of the Night is so easy means that you don't ever really need to learn the game too intensely. And this is another thing that I've kind of already talked about, but I'm just going to say it again. Yeah, these enemies are not fun to fight because they tend to come at you out of nowhere. Like they'll just jump up from below, or they'll walk into you from off screen. These guys are from Symphony of the Night too. Shades are from Symphony of the Night. They really kind of got a lot of mileage out of these Symphony of the Night sprites, huh? I think I read about that. I think this game was kind of made in a rush. Because they couldn't... I mean, that would explain the weapon synthesis system in the main game. That's the kind of thing that you could only really approve of if you were not thinking clearly. And you were under some kind of external pressure from deadlines or from something else. Because they really struggled to figure out how to integrate the DS's mechanics into a Castlevania game, and the solution they ultimately came up with was very bad. In my opinion. I'm not a fan of the DS stylus in general, so it's kind of like asking... There is no stylus mechanic that I think I could enjoy, basically. I sort of disagree with the concept. That's a problem really with a lot of Nintendo games around this era, around the era of like the Wii, and then pretty much the Wii, and then after the Wii Nintendo games. Is that I was talking to somebody about the Zelda series. This is a tangent, but I'm going off on one because this part of the game is so fucking boring. I was talking to a friend of mine about the Zelda series, and about because Breath of the Wild. I know why, because Breath of the Wild 2 just got announced, or just got like a trailer just came out, and we were talking about the Zelda series and about why it changed with Breath of the Wild, because prior to Breath of the Wild, they were just making these Ocarina of Time style games, and then the last one of those they made was Skyward Sword, and which neither of us had played. And so we were talking to each other, we were kind of like asking about, well, was Skyward Sword like bad? Is that why they stopped making games like that? Did it not sell that well? And I looked up the numbers, it did not sell that well. I mean, it sold better than Wind Waker, but I'm imagining it was below what they were hoping for. And I bring this all up because Skyward Sword is a good example of a problem that Nintendo games around this era had. I don't know if this is true or not, but all it would take for Skyward Sword to be bad is just for the Wii controls to be bad, because Skyward Sword was a Wii game. So the crux of what makes the game good or bad is this hardware issue that either works or doesn't work. And I think that's an unfortunate place to put your game in, where it's like, before you even start evaluating the game, you have to evaluate this hardware gimmick. And that makes it hard to it's like the game, it's like nothing else that the game does matters if it can't pass that baseline test. So if the Wiimote controls were bad in Skyward Sword, then the game itself is automatically bad, because that's the whole game. And that's kind of what the DS is like to a certain extent, where if they had decided to really lean into the stylus mechanics with this game, then the game would have been bad no matter what. I think Dawn of Sorrow is pretty bad as it is. Well, actually, I have to take that back, because I don't think the game is bad. I think the game is viciously flawed, and I think that... But Julius mode is really good. So that's actually some trouble I'm having in my overall evaluation of the game, because there's like one way that I would rate the base game, and then a totally different way that I would rate Julius mode. This fucking boss sucks my fucking dick. I hate this boss so much, because it's that, for one thing. If you're too close to the wall and he turns into the hand, he's just gonna hit you no matter what. For another thing, when he turns into the bat, and he starts lunging around, there's no telegraph on the lunge. He doesn't warn you before he does it, he just does it, and you have to get the timing down. So, it's not about reactions, or about, it's just about learning a pattern that purely consists of a certain timing. So that actually was a bit of a problem when I went to do the boss rush. I don't remember how many times exactly I died to the bat on the boss rush on Julius, but it was more than I would like. It wasn't as bad as Zephyr, but it was still pretty bad. And a lot of the bosses in Dawn of Sorrow actually have the same problem, which is that you fight them in a tiny box. That's why that guy is so hard, because you have to deal with his bat lunges, and the hand that slowly floats towards you while you're in a tiny box. And I legitimately don't know what you're supposed to do if he turns into the hand while he's too close to the wall, because it just seems like... It seems like if he just chooses to do that at the wrong time, you are just fucked. And I know what you might be thinking, well, just go to whatever wall he's furthest from, but that's the thing, sometimes he's pretty much smack in the middle. And if he's smack in the middle and he decides to turn into the hand, then, it's like you're fucked. I don't know, I always felt like there was some interaction with that particular boss mechanic that I didn't know about. Like, maybe there was something you could do to, get the hand to not hit you, but I never figured it out. A lot of the middle stretch of the Julius boss rush is kind of like... This applies to Julius, but this also applies to the other Julius mode characters. You're just kind of fishing for a good pattern in a lot of cases. But I guess I'll wait until I see more bosses to talk to talk about that and to discuss the overall like problems with the structure of the boss rush. This fucking part of the game is so annoying. This is another thing where it's like you just don't have the fucking tool. This is like one of the few moments where Julius just doesn't have the tools to... Actually, you know what? I bet if I walked through that door and Grand Crossed immediately, I could probably kill at least one Harpy, so that was probably a consequence of me underutilizing Grand Cross, which is what I was afraid of. The one downside to Julius is that the whip is really good, but it doesn't really do that much damage. Like, the individual whip swings don't do as much as Alucard's sword does, but the idea is that you're supposed to compensate for that with regular sub-weapon usage. But if you're saving a sub-weapon for a particular moment, or to react to a particular thing, then that can be a problem, because now you're just sitting waiting, plinking away like 40 HP at a time. That's kind of what the Grim Reaper fight is like, but I'm gonna wait until I get there to talk more about that. Yeah, hardware issues. I think I kind of already talked about that. I don't know. I actually haven't even started on Portrait of Ruin as of this recording, so I'm a little bit nervous to see what other like DS mechanics the rest of the trilogy has, if any. I hope they don't have any. Did I make note of the naked Yoko falling out of her clothes in my main commentary? I probably did, but I guess I'll just point it out again here. This is what I mean when I say that Dawn of Sorrow is like peak raunchiness for Castlevania. So I'm going back into the guest house to fight Paranoia, which is a boss that I'll probably have time to talk about during the fight, and I might even be able to demonstrate it. Paranoia is like a really obnoxious boss. It's... I would go so far as to say it's badly designed, which I don't think about many... I don't really think that about a lot of the bosses in Dawn of Sorrow. I think that they're just really unforgiving, which is not the same thing as badly designed. I think Paranoia is kind of badly designed because, at least in the context of Julius mode, I don't really know how extensively they tested these bosses in Julius mode, but... And this is also kind of a problem of my own creation, because if I were to do the Paranoia boss fight on Alucard, then I could just use the bat form to avoid some of his attacks, but that's not an option to me, obviously, on Julius. So, so it's not totally fair for me to just say... It's actually not fair for me to say it's badly designed, if I'm kind of creating the problem myself. But what I'm getting at is that doing this fight on Julius is very, very tricky, because you don't have tools that the game, I think, sort of expects you to have. Namely, bat form, and I'm gonna explain why that's important in a minute here. This guy ever fucking disappears. Yeah, the mirror thing here. Obviously, if you have bat form, you can be in any part of the room at the time that attack goes off, right? You can be in any space. But if you are, if you're playing as Julius, obviously you don't have that option. Julius has to sit on the floor, and the consequence of that is that if a mirror pattern comes up that goes across the floor, which does happen, you're basically fucked. And this is the thing about it that I think is... I don't know if I could say necessarily badly designed in general, but in terms of, in the context of like a boss rush, when I was trying to no damage the boss rush, this was one boss that I actually could just get random undodgeable patterns on, because the way that the mirrors work, it's not as random as it looks. And the reason that I'm standing still here is because my strat for killing the second phase of Paranoia, which is what's going to come up after this, involves heavy usage of Grand Cross, which costs a lot of MP, so I want to go into the fight with full MP. That's what's happening here. The mirrors, the way the mirrors work is basically they aim at you. Wherever you happen to be, as he's winding up a mirror shot, whatever pattern the mirrors create will hit that spot. So my strat for dealing with the mirror problem on Julius is to jump up in the air before the mirrors activate to try to bait them into shooting upward, and then hope that they do an upward pattern that doesn't hit the floor. That was actually a perfect example I'm talking about, where the first mirror pattern was across the floor, and I like didn't have a choice but to get hit. But the second one, I actually could have avoided if he didn't happen to pick that mirror to stick his hand out of. That was actually two different, probably unavoidable chunks of damage there, but for two different reasons. And the only reason that I took the second like hit was because I was in a bad position after the first one. See, this is actually bad. I'm complaining, I'm calling it badly designed, but that was actually my fault for fucking that up, because I think I knew at this point to bait the first mirror, but I didn't have like the timing down to bait the second mirror, because I want to try to bait both mirror shots up into the air. I can't just... See, this is bad too. I should have ducked underneath the far left mirror. Yeah, see, this is the problem. When I sit on the floor like that, that's when it's really bad. The reason I paused there was to analyze where like the mirror laser was going to go and to react accordingly, which is the bigger problem that I have with the mirror phase in general, which is that it gives you a lot of information all at once and then doesn't really give you time to react to it properly. And this pause, I think, is a... What is this? This is another people screaming at the window? No, this is actually a bathroom break. Wow, I forgot to edit this out? Fuck. Maybe, well, shit. I don't know. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll cut this out. Maybe I'll leave it in. Fuck it, I'll just leave it in. It's too late now. I already uploaded the unedited version. A classic style Chauvitar bathroom break for a classic style Castlevania adventure. Did I fall in or something? What is taking me so long? Am I like running the dishwasher or something? What am I doing? I wonder if I got up to do multiple things and like thought about cutting this out. I wonder why I didn't. I probably just forgot. I've been so fucking busy lately, it's actually insane. It's one of many reasons why it took me so long to why I needed to take that week-long break after Aria to like actually get this footage, because I've just been so fucking busy. But not too busy for you guys. Not too busy to sit down and talk some shit about Castlevania. The succubus... How do I feel about the succubus enemy? It's not particularly threatening in Dawn of Sorrow. It seems like they die a lot faster than they do in Aria of Sorrow. In Aria of Sorrow, like the endgame succubi are actually kind of terrifying, because if they actually hit you, they can hit you for like 260 or like 250, or like no, it's more than that. It's like 300 if they hit you. And at that point, and like an Aria of Sorrow endgame, you only have like 800 health, so 300 damage is a lot at that point. Oh, this is fun. I kind of wish I found more opportunities to do that on Julius, to do the whole throw the cross behind you and then let it come forward. Because the reason that's important is because... The reason that's like generally useful is because the cross has a limited forward range, but then when it flies back towards you, it has no limit. It'll just keep flying back towards you until it leaves the screen. So if there's something out in front of you that a normal cross throw doesn't reach, you can throw the cross behind you and then jump over it as it comes back, and it'll go like the whole length of the screen. The reason that's not useful here is because of just the way that enemy... That's something I do more in like the classic Castlevania games, but in Metroid-style Castlevania games, enemies just have so much health that taking all the time to set up one cross throw is not really worth it, generally speaking. Like, yeah, there's not, like, very few enemies are gonna die in one cross throw like that. And it's generally less risky to close distance in these games than it is in classic Castlevania. This is my favorite thing in the whole world. Yeah, they didn't quite phase this out yet. Enemies that when you hit them, they go flying off the screen. It's the most annoying thing in the world. And I've already like talked about that before, but I'll bring it up here again. Julius mode's great, but it's not like it's not perfect. If Dawn of Sorrow was just Julius mode, I would probably rank Dawn of Sorrow like pretty highly, honestly. It's better than Chronicles. Only because of Chronicles level 2. Better than Super Castlevania 4, that's for sure. Would I say better than Bloodlines? Maybe. Because honestly, Castlevania Bloodlines for the Genesis, like... that game, like, has no real problems gameplay-wise, but I'm gonna be totally honest, and if you guys love Castlevania Bloodlines, this might piss you off, but... I think Castlevania Bloodlines looks and sounds like absolute garbage. I hate the way Bloodlines looks, and I think that the music is, like, some pieces are okay, but I think I just might not be a fan of... Maybe it has to do with the Genesis sound chip or something, but I think the music in Bloodlines is, like, not very engaging. And it looks like hot garbage. These fucking things are so annoying to fight, dude. He said as a train went by outside. What's so obnoxious about this is that these guys are right before a boss fight, so if I take damage from them, then I'm, like, incentivized to drop back down to go to the save station, then come back up and try again. Because this next boss actually is pretty dangerous. It's dangerous in Soma mode, and it's really dangerous in Julius mode. So this guy, the issue, honestly, with this boss is how much fucking health he has, because I don't know what exactly the deal is, but Julius, this is where, like, Julius's low damage becomes a problem, because when I did this fight on Soma, in the main game, like, my hits were doing, my individual, like, my sword swings were doing, like, 135, and then my sub-weapon usages were doing, like, 115. Here, every whip shot is doing, like, 40, and every crucifix throw is doing, like, 69 to 92 damage. So I just have a lot of health to chew through on this guy. Like, look, I'm already out of MP, and I would be shocked if he's even at half health right now. Maybe he is. I actually don't know how much health he has. I've looked up health for some bosses, but not this guy. But generally speaking, the fact that the whip has such a long range is really good here for Julius, because one of the toughest things about fighting this guy is not getting hit by his claw attack that you just saw me do, the big overhand claw attack. That's like the attack that he does that's dangerous, that's like the most likely to hit you. And being able to hit him from far away goes a long way to letting you avoid that. Unless you get lazy, unless you relax and you become complacent and he catches you. This is more like it, yeah. Attacking him at closer to this distance or like even longer is really what you should be doing. And what just happened there is actually an interesting case of like the kind of thing that doesn't usually come up in gameplay, which is that, so I threw a cross there and it only hit him twice, and the reason, or only hit him once, the reason it only hit him once is because I threw the cross and then I backed up so far that he wasn't on the screen anymore. And the cross can't hit things if they're not on the screen, so it would make more sense to just conserve MP until I'm sure I can throw the cross and then stay close enough to him that he's going to stay on the screen for it to do the full 92 damage. There we go. That actually wasn't that bad. It kind of took longer than I expected it to, but it wasn't that bad. And the reason I didn't use I could have used the axe there, probably. What you can't do on that boss is use the Grand Cross. Like, you might think that avoiding the claw attack, using the Grand Cross to avoid the claw attack would be a good idea, but the problem is just the timing. Like, in Harmony of Dissonance, when you used magic spells on Juiced, you became invincible, like, almost immediately. But for Julius's Grand Cross, there's like a little bit of a delay before when you actually hit the button and when you become invincible. And by the time you know that Agony is going to do the claw attack, like by the time you see him doing it, he's already doing it. There's just no time to activate Grand Cross before he can actually hit you. And activating it preemptively is not a good idea because you can come out of Grand Cross, because there's just so many different things he can do that can hit you at the moment that you come out of Grand Cross. So, unfortunately not really viable. The axe maybe could be good, but I think the reason I decided not to do that was because I had just gotten used to... the axe actually might be better, because I wouldn't have to double jump to hit him with a sub-weapon, but I think I had just gotten into this rhythm of double jumping and attacking, and it was just easier to mix the cross in with the whip, like, seamlessly, and not have to worry about doing, like, different things for different attacks. Those are the kinds of things you have to think about when you have to, like... When you come up with consistent strategies, they should be consistent not just in concept, but consistent in execution, and, like, the physical execution, and, like, how you pull them off. Changing things up is necessary in a lot of situations, but basically, if you can just keep doing the same thing over and over again, that's what you should try to do, because that's just easier. It just reduces the chance of error. Because that's something that I've learned in my time playing all these games, is human error is inevitable. Sooner or later, some way or another, you're gonna fuck something up. And you should anticipate that. Oh, I can't believe I never got a chance to talk about that before. Yeah, so Julius doesn't have like a big super jump the way that he had in Aria of Sorrow, but he does have a little extra third jump where he sticks his fist up in the air, and that actually can do damage to things, like I just demonstrated on that little weird flying eye monster. Pretty limited usefulness, because like the slide kick, in these games, it's one of those things where if you kill them and you don't take damage, but if you don't kill them, you just jumped into something and hit yourself for, like, no reason. So, not the kind of thing that really makes sense to consistently utilize. Especially because, as I mentioned before, enemies in these games have so much health. The odds of you one-shotting something by doing 40 damage to it are not very high. Like, I don't think it gives you iframes or anything like that. I'd be very surprised if it did. Like, I think... I know there's allegedly a mechanic in these games where... Oh, this is an accident. I know there's allegedly a mechanic in these games where if you... Basically, if an enemy is taking damage, they can't damage you, but... It just seems like you're taking a big risk to just, like, jump into something and hope that by the time they finish taking damage, you're not going to be in contact with them anymore. It just seems way too inconsistent. So now we go into the home stretch. The Mine of Judgment into the Abyss. Something that I haven't mentioned yet about Dawn of Sorrow as a positive is its difficulty curve. I think I mentioned this in the main game, but shit, oops. I fucking bumped my microphone. Sorry about that, guys. Difficulty curve, yeah. Dawn of Sorrow... Dawn of Sorrow does a good job of making the game consistently hard into the end game, which is good from a gameplay perspective, but not good from a my blood pressure perspective, because if I'm trying to clear all these games like Deathless with no splicing and no segmenting, then that means that I'm put in the situation where I could literally die like 2 hours, like 90 minutes into a run. It does not... It's one of those things where it's like my desire to get good footage and to defeat this challenge is conflicting with my desire to play like a well-made game. It's like, damn it, I wish this final boss fight was fucking anticlimactic and easy so I didn't have to worry about it, but not the case. Although the final boss of Julius mode, which is Soma, is actually not as hard as I'd say either of the bosses that come before it. He's not easy, but he's not super hard once you figure out what to do. And that's kind of like the litmus test for like what makes a boss really, really hard. Is there's like 2 stages to learning a boss fight. There's what the fuck do I do, and then how the fuck do I do that. There's a moment where you learn the correct strategy, and then after you learn the correct strategy, you have to execute it. A boss like Gurgoth is a good example of a boss that's hard because it's tough to figure out the correct strategy. But once you actually figure out what's going on with Gurgoth and like what you're supposed to do for each of his attacks, he's not that hard in my opinion. But then, like, the hardest kind of bosses are bosses where it's hard to figure out what to do, and then even after you figure out what to do, it's hard to actually do it. And I would say that all 3 of the bosses... of the 3 final bosses for Dawn of Sorrow, I would say it's Death, and then Abaddon, and then Soma. And I would say Death and... Well, Death is easy on Julius. Generally, Death is pretty fucking hard, but I would say Death is easy, Soma is relatively easy, and then Abaddon is really fucking hard. Abaddon's like the most extreme example of kind of the opposite of Gurgoth, where it's pretty easy to figure out what to do for Abaddon, but like the problem is actually doing it. Like I have ideas in my head of how I react to Abaddon's attacks, but actually executing them is the tricky part. The reason why I say the Grim Reaper is easy on Julius is because the Grim Reaper fight has 2 phases, and the most dangerous part of the fight is the second phase because he has this particular attack that's really hard to dodge. But Julius can use invulnerability to completely avoid it with Grand Cross. It's kind of like what he couldn't do with Agony, because the dangerous attack that Death does actually does have enough of a wind-up, enough of a telegraph for you to activate Grand Cross, so... It's kind of like this is what Agony could be like if Agony was a little bit less aggressive. And you'll see it in Phase 2. This isn't Phase 2, this is Phase 1, as you can tell, because it's the first phase. This is actually another great example of the whip being really, really important, because what makes both phases of the Death fight dangerous, besides the attack that I was talking about before, is that when he's actually committed to doing an attack, like when he's swinging a scythe at you, or when he's like summoning like smaller scythes, or when he's like shooting laser beams at you, which might happen later, like that's not when he's hard. Once he's committed to doing a certain attack, it's just a matter of executing the correct movement to dodge it, which is not that bad. He's tricky when he's doing shit like this right now, when he's kind of like floating around in the air and you don't really know what he's gonna do, and he could just kind of like maybe float right into you or float away from you. Exactly, like right there. That's exactly what I'm talking about. When he doesn't know what he's doing yet, that's when he's the most dangerous. And the whip, having such a long range, lets you continue attacking him, while also maintaining a safe enough distance to not get hit by his random like swings through the air. That right there was an example of me fucking up the Grand Cross timing. I activated Grand Cross too early, and because I was just a little bit nervous, and as a consequence, I got barely cooked by the scythe. I should execute it at the right time when he does it again, which I think he should do it again, at least once. The timing for it that I eventually figured out was... What the fuck? The time for it I eventually figured out was like right when the first of the 3 small scythes he summons is like about to hit me, that's when I trigger it. Like right here? Yeah, exactly like that. This is a very interesting phase 2, because he's not, oh god, that's so scary. Just watching this is actually kind of making my fucking, like, hands sweat. Usually he'll do a thing sometimes where he'll teleport and, like, swing a scythe at you, but... yeah, there it is. Oh my god, I could talk about that attack. Okay, so that teleport attack, I didn't learn how it worked until, like, I collected the last piece of footage for Dawn of Sorrow, and the way that it works is so weird. Because he'll teleport and then he'll swing at you, and you're supposed to duck under his swing, but if you keep ducking, like if you're still ducking after he finishes the... if you keep ducking after he finishes the first swing, then then he'll swing at you again. But if you just so much as stand up, unless you're literally still ducking twice, he won't swing twice. Unless you're literally still ducking after his first swing, he won't swing twice. He'll only swing at you a second time if you're ducking. This fucking enemy can seriously just, like, go to hell. I mean, I know he lives in hell, but, like, this is the most annoying shit in the whole game. Like gameplay-wise. And it's a perfect example of what I talk about when I talk about the problems of, like, fighting enemies in a tiny box, where, like, you can't avoid that attack. Like that attack he does where he summons, like, the 3, like, little fireballs that shoot towards you. You don't have room to dodge it. I mean, like, you do, but you don't. Yoko can dodge it, because Yoko can actually move faster than Julius can in certain, She has a faster backdash, but Julius, like, can't fucking avoid that shit. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Now that's a great example of a nice civilized attack, where he just targets a spot, and if you sit in the same spot you get hit, but if you move you dodge. It's not like he targets where you are, and, like, every square inch around where you are. Like, for 10 feet around you. This is also frustrating. This is a good example of why you shouldn't have enemies fly off the screen, because I basically had to guess where that thing was. Fuck, I think I'm kind of losing my voice. How much time do I have left? 14 minutes? Okay, I could probably keep going for 14 minutes. Because I actually have to keep going, because I really want to talk about the Abaddon fight. And the Soma fight. I want to talk about both of them. I guess I could start talking about the Abaddon fight, like, preemptively, maybe. I guess I will, because I don't know how long it's going to take. Abaddon is a really fascinating boss. I already talked about it a little bit in my main game video, but fighting Abaddon as Soma is not really fighting Abaddon, in my opinion, because beating Abaddon... Do you know what I said before about Abaddon, how it's like a boss where it's like once you figure out what to do, the hard part is actually doing it? That's not what it's like on Soma at all. On Soma, it's just about figuring out what to do. Because Soma has so many souls, he has so many tools, it's not hard to find a good, consistent solution for Abaddon. Oh, I have to avoid this boss instead of fighting it because that big chicken takes reduced damage from holy attacks, and if memory serves, I bet the axe probably doesn't do holy damage, but I just remember, like, Julius just didn't do enough damage to that thing, and it was just like it just like summons Valkyries at a rate faster than you can kill them, and it just turns into a shit show, so I just choose to avoid it. And if I really, really felt like it, I could turn into Alucard and fly over this thing too, but this is Julius only, baby. That means I don't turn into Alucard unless I absolutely have to. I really hoped that I'd never fight another one of these, but here we are. These are the things that I had to farm for 2 hours in my main Soma video that you guys didn't see. Abaddon, right, yeah. So Abaddon on Soma is just a matter of figuring out what to do. Abaddon on the Julius mode characters is like, now you're really in the shit. Now you are in like the crucible. Where you have to execute things like immaculately. And I'm not just talking about like no damage boss rush like autism challenges. I'm talking about like just fighting him in Julius mode, like just beating Abaddon in the base game is like, you really need to be good. Yeah, I was really hoping I could make that jump without Alucard, but unfortunately I cannot. Like I think I get hit once by Abaddon in this upcoming fight, and I'm pretty sure it almost kills me. So let's find out if that's true. Like how stringent is the execution check here. I will say this, Julius has an easier time fighting Abaddon than Yoko does. From like easiest Abaddon fight to hardest, I would say it's like Soma, Alucard, Julius, and then Yoko. No damaging Abaddon on Yoko is actually almost impossible. It's doable. I actually have done it before, but it's really hard. No damaging Abaddon on Julius is much more feasible, but it just involves like, you just really have to be fast, and you have to be very you just have to respect him so much. This is the part that's tricky. Is honestly half the problem is just remembering, because there are so many like, he has 4 attacks, but he really has like 8 attacks, because depending on where you are in the room and where he is in the room and whether he's facing you or not facing you, the correct response to those attacks can be different. So like, for the sideways U attack, either I'm supposed to crouch and then flail the whip to destroy the bugs, but if he's facing away from me and he does that and I'm behind him, I have to try to jump over it on like a really precise timing, which you might see. Same with like the vertical U attack. It's like if I'm in the middle of the screen, I can just kind of yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That is so tight right there. This is what I'm talking about. And see, this is what I mean. I hesitated for a split second there, because usually my response to that attack is to jump if I'm in the middle of the screen, but then if he's in the middle of the screen, like jumping during that attack can be kind of risky, because he could like jump as you're coming down and like change his position. So the smarter thing to do is just plant yourself up against the wall and whip flail like this. But because I was at a spot there where it was like borderline, where I thought I could jump over him or I could go to the wall, I like hesitated for a split second, and because I hesitated, the bugs hit me and almost killed me. So I'm doing the Julius dance, because I can't believe I survived. I thought for sure I was going to die. I thought, great, that's 80 minutes down the drain. But he didn't fuck with me again. And I think I'll wait until the Alucard video to talk about why I think the fight is easier on Alucard than it is on Julius, because it's not really it's like an execution thing. Even though the Abaddon fight is way faster on Julius, because Julius can damage Abaddon way faster than Alucard can, because I think Abaddon might be weak to Holy, so that's why like the cross is doing so much damage there. So that is kind of the one saving grace of the Julius-Abaddon fight, is that Julius can kill him super fast, so he has fewer chances to fuck you over. Most of Julius's response to Abaddon's attacks involve using the cross to like intercept the bugs before they get to you, but it's never that simple. Or like whip flailing and using the cross. Those are the tools that make him. Those are just the tools that make Abaddon possible. Those tools don't make Abaddon easy. Soma has the Malachi Soul. The Malachi Soul makes Abaddon easy, but well, even then he's tricky and you'll get fucked if you hesitate, but This was so fucking scary, because I was like, how am I ever going to do this? I don't remember. Oh, I think I actually used the... Yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. I only did it so I could get this bitch over here, but it worked. Now I last swapped to Alucard to get up this little, Oh wait, what the hell? Is that a platform? Oh. I had no idea. Those little skulls were platforms. Oh. Okay, I thought they were just like background decoration. That's why Alucard, like... Okay. I had literally no idea. Well, now I know. Soma fight. Soma fight, coming up now. Very much like a classic Dracula fight. In appearance more than in execution. Phase 1 doesn't really feel... I like the way that the voice actor delivers that line, the way he says Belmont, which really kind of like... Well, I'll talk about Phase 1 first. Basically, instead of waiting for him to show up, hitting him, and then running away, you should wait for him to show up, wait for him to attack, then hit him and run away. So it's slightly different from a normal Phase 1, because, like, there's not really... I mean, you can do both. You can kind of, like, hit him and then run away and then hit him again. It just all happens a lot more slowly than it usually does in a Dracula Phase 1. And then you have the added wild card of Gaben sometimes dive bombing at you. Which fortunately he does on like a set timer, so you can kind of get a feel for when he's probably going to do it and when he's probably not going to do it. Like if too much time has passed without Gaben charging you, you know that's probably going to come up pretty soon. I like the way the voice actor delivers that line where he says Belmondo, because it's like... It's so... he's really pouring a lot of malice into that line. It's that thing that Japanese voice actors do where they can actually voice act. It's really impressive. And it kind of was like the thing that sold me on not being like... Like, obviously this is an alternate mode, so it's like you can kind of decide for yourself whether this is canon or not. And I kind of like went back and forth about it, but I think I like just hearing that line, and it's like, I don't know, something about the timeless hatred towards the Belmonts is like, it works. It just works here somehow, even though it's like Soma and it's not really Dracula. Although he's turning into the fucking demon again, so I don't know. That kind of looks like Dracula to me. Unless this is like unless the demon inside Dracula is like a demon, a different like entity, but I really don't think so. Yeah, the way that you do this fight is also different from a regular Dracula Phase 2, because the way the regular Dracula Phase 2s work are usually like you back away from him until you go up against a corner, and then once you're cornered, you have to run under him. But here, you can't get cornered. You need to keep him in the middle of the room the whole time because of this attack that he's doing here where he summons the bugs, which cover like such a vast stretch of distance in front of him that you need him to do that attack from as far away from a wall as possible, so you don't get stuck between him and him shooting bugs and the wall, and then you just get hit by the bugs. So you need to keep him in the middle of the room. The result is that you're constantly running underneath him, and the timing for running underneath him is very tight. So you have to like always be ready to do it, because if you go too early, you'll run into him, and then if you go too late, you'll get hit by the weird like centipedes that the harpy is shooting. So that's basically the situation here. And if you're wondering who that guy in the background is in the picture, I have no fucking clue. I'm guessing it's supposed to be Dracula. And I'm pretty sure that the holy water is doing more damage here than the cross would do, because I'm hitting him more times. Look at that. Beautiful. Hey, that was a no damage. Good job, me. Yeah, I was still... The reason why I would still classify that fight as, like, dangerous is because he does a ton of damage. Like, if I had gotten hit there, I think, like, one hit would have done, like, 175 or something. And if you fuck up... And it can be a situation where if you fuck up one thing, you're going to get hit by multiple things. So, like, if I ran under him too early, I could get hit by, like, one of the centipedes, and then, like, get clipped by one of his talons, and I might have just taken, like, 350 damage, and now I'm at, like, half health. So... things can always go wrong, and I actually almost got hit by one of the bugs there at a certain point. It like barely passed me by, so it's not... I mean, nothing is going to be as hard as Abaddon probably ever, but it's still tricky, and still very punishing. So that's Julius mode on Julius. I think I have ammunition to talk about the other two characters too. And that's part of why I think I took so much time finishing this game, is because playing Julius mode with all three characters, learning all three characters, you know, getting accustomed to their tools and to their capabilities was really, really fun. This is kind of exactly what I loved so much about Dracula's Curse, was having these multiple playable characters gave you more things to learn about and more things to master. And that's also why I decided to no damage the boss rush with them, because even though that was really harrowing and really difficult and honestly pretty stressful, putting yourself in a situation like that forces you to learn the characters comprehensively and to get a really good feel for what they're able to do, and to be able to utilize those capabilities to the best of your... as best you can. I really need to come up with some kind of solution to this whole fucking street sound thing. Anyway, that's the video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to the fucking traffic outside. I'll come back with more videos soon, and I'll try to find a solution to this. See you guys later. Keep on Earth rocking.